begging forgiveness. Pope Francis begins his first full day in Chile with a stunning apology. Religious recognition. President Trump honors the free expression of religion, home and abroad. Looming shutdown. Democrats and Republicans scramble to cut a deal on immigration to keep the government running. We're on Capitol Hill. And Forward March. We talk with Jeannie Mancini, president of the March for Life. The rally on Friday marks the anniversary of Roe v. Wade. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, January 16th, 2018. Pope Francis is greeted by tens of thousands of jubilant Chileans at a mass in the capital, O'Higgins Park. It's the same spot St. John Paul II celebrated Mass 3 decades ago. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Pope Francis begs for forgiveness for the irreparable damage done to children who were abused by clergy. This comes on the Holy Father's first full day in Chile.
Primeras palabras del Evangelio que acabamos de escuchar.
Francis dove headfirst into the scandal that has hurt the Catholic Church's credibility in the country. The Holy Father also met privately with Chilean President Michelle Bachelet and addressed lawmakers, judges, and other authorities. Arsonists firebombed 3 Catholic churches in Chile today. 2 were in the south, and the 3rd was south of the capital, Santiago. Overall, 9 churches have been destroyed since last Friday. It's not clear who is responsible for the attacks. Paula Schmidt is a Chilean journalist. She also contributes to Catholic Voices Chile. That's a group of professionals who articulate the Church's point of view. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Lauren.
We just heard about the terrible fires that have been set. How are Chileans reacting to both that and to the Pope's visit?
Well, there are 2 contrasting things that you just said about Chileans reacting to the Pope and the churches being burnt. I would say that the festivity and the excitement is much greater than what's been happening in the South about the churches being burnt. It's been very important for us to receive the Pope in this opportunity after 31 years.
After 31 years. How are Chileans reacting to the Pope's apology to victims of abuse?
I think it was a much needed point that he made, and that Chileans are very grateful to have the Pope recognize that issue and to acknowledge their pain.
This visit has been marked by a lot of controversy, as we have talked about. What are the issues causing this pain, this contention?
Well, I'd have to disagree on being a controversial visit in the sense that people knew what to expect of this Pope. Chileans are very hopeful of the future and kind of cling to the Pope's message about not closing the eyes towards the past, but also recognizing the present and projecting the future together. So I think it's been a time of hope and a time of happiness. And even though people recognize, like the Pope, that there have been problems and fragmentations in society, you must not hold that a grudge, and you have to unite together in order to be hopeful and to project the future.
Very good. Thank you so much. Paula Schmidt, Chilean journalist.
Thank you.
President Trump calls on America to be a champion for religious freedom around the world. He issued a proclamation to mark this day as Religious Freedom Day. He is calling attention to Christian persecution abroad and the right of nuns and bakers here at home. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. Catholic groups like the Little Sisters of the Poor have benefited from the Trump administration's actions on religious liberty. I spoke with one expert who says it's something to celebrate, but there's still more work to be done.
Religious freedom is not just for religious people. It's not just for Christians, or it's not just for Protestants, it's not just for Catholics, it's for everyone, and including non-believers.
Peter Sprigg, a senior fellow with the Family Research Council, says religious freedom faces a number of challenges in the U.S.
The state of Colorado is compelling Jack Phillips to communicate a message he does not agree with.
From the pending Supreme Court decision on Jack Phillips, a baker who says his religious liberty would be violated by decorating a wedding cake for a gay couple, to the work of nuns who were asked to comply with an Obama-era contraceptive mandate that violated their beliefs.
It was shocking that even an explicitly religious organization like an order of nuns like the Little Sisters of the Poor was being subjected to this same type of regulation.
The Trump administration reversed the contraceptive mandate in 2017, saying it imposed a substantial burden on groups like the Little Sisters who serve the elderly poor. Today, Trump said in a presidential proclamation, no American, whether a nun, nurse, baker, or business owner, should be forced to choose between the tenets of faith or adherence to the law. On this day in 1786, Thomas Jefferson's Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom passed the Virginia General Assembly, which served as the inspiration for First Amendment protections and inspired Religious Freedom Day. The president of the Religious Freedom Institute, Dr. Thomas Farr, tells News Nightly, religious freedom is in global crisis. Among the concerns, he says Christians and other religious minorities are in danger of extinction in Iraq, and Rohingya Muslims are suffering atrocities in Myanmar. Lauren?
White House correspondent Mark Irons, thank you. A reminder to our viewers, EWTN filed a lawsuit against the government in February of 2012 to challenge the contraceptive mandate. Lawmakers in both parties are trying to hammer out a spending deal to prevent a government shutdown on Friday. That deal is linked to tense negotiations over immigration. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi tells us allegations the president used a swear word in those talks are still rattling Capitol Hill. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Lauren. A Trump official on the Hill today says the president did not use that vulgar word in reference to African countries during that meeting at the White House. But that's of no consolation to immigrants waiting for Congress to decide their fate. I spoke to one young man here at the Capitol, born in Mexico.
I would say that I'm an American everywhere but my paperwork.
20-year-old Sergio Gonzalez entered the United States illegally when he was 7. Today, he's lobbying lawmakers to keep President Obama's protection for 800,000 people like him under the program DACA, or Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. But the path to a deal is rocky after a meeting in the Oval Office. Senator Durbin accuses the president of using a swear word to describe African countries.
I stand by every word I said.
President Trump's Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen testifies she didn't hear that word.
I did not hear that word used, no, sir. And I actually was struck more by the fact that the conversation, although passionate and appropriately so, had gotten to a place where many people in the room were using inappropriate language in the Oval Office in front of the president.
The impasse over immigration could lead to a government shutdown Friday.
Given the president's strikingly unhelpful comments in the immigration meeting last week, I think it's more likely than not.
I think it would be a terrible mistake to shut down the government, and particularly while we are negotiating in good faith.
President Trump gave Congress until March to come up with a DACA fix, but dreamer Sergio Gonzalez tells me he needs clarity now.
Just provides that climate of fear and uncertainty, and so I cannot do long-term planning, and that for me is causing a lot of anxiety.
House Republicans meet tonight to discuss funding the government and what they should do on DACA and immigration. The countdown clock, though, is ticking, Lauren. Spending runs out Friday night.
And Jason, a judge last week ruled against the Trump administration's bid to end DACA in March. I understand we're getting some late-breaking developments on this case.
You're right. A lower court judge temporarily blocked the administration's plan to end DACA in March. The Trump administration is appealing that to an appeals court, and the Department of Justice announces today they plan to make an emergency appeal right to the Supreme Court.
Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi. Thank you, Jason. Joining us now is Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief for The Hill. Bob, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Lauren.
Is DACA dead?
I don't think DACA's dead, but certainly we could have a government shutdown. We're just days away. They're really nowhere at this point. The interesting thing here, Lauren, is that whatever deal they come up with eventually, whether maybe they punt for a month, but the big deal on immigration, the left is not going to like, the right won't like. So can the middle hold it together?
The vulgarity that Jason mentioned and that we have, the media, the secular media, all of the media have been talking about ad nauseum, continues. And with this back and forth about the tone of the meeting, what does this say about a working relationship between the White House and the Hill?
Well, just a week ago, the president had a very bipartisan, very presidential press event where he opened up and you saw the great negotiation between both sides. And then now we're debating what was said behind closed doors, not really the policy. So whatever was said in that contentious meeting, it certainly has not helped and is hurting a deal on immigration.
If the government shuts down, who gets the blame and who has the most to lose?
In all likelihood, the Republicans, because they control everything. They control Congress and the White House. But unlike with President Clinton and President Obama, President Trump is a Republican. So he has the bully pulpit. So maybe he's going to go after Democrats. His approval ratings are not high. They're in the 30s, maybe 40, depending on what poll you look at. So I think Republicans on Capitol Hill privately are telling us they don't want a shutdown because they think they would get blamed. And that's probably, I think, the course. And so Democrats are trying to play a strong hand. At the same time, they said don't hold Obamacare hostage when we had the last one. Well, now they're saying, well, we got to have this as part of a budget deal. So Republicans saying that's hypocritical.
Oh, that's just politics, isn't it? Right. Steve Bannon testified on Capitol Hill before the committee investigating the Russia role in the 2016 election. Given what he reportedly has disclosed to Fire and Fury author Michael Wolff, do you think the administration is worried about what he could be saying to this committee?
I think so. I mean, depending on what they know, certainly there was some questions about the transition, what was said. Now, Steve Bannon went on 60 Minutes and he said, this Russia thing there's nothing there. There's no there. But Michael Wolff, he says it was treasonous, this meeting with Donald Trump and the Russian. So I don't know. I think that whatever it is, Bannon has to watch that. Remember, you're under oath. You got to tell the truth, or you could go to jail just for lying.
Let's move on to the president's physical, just before, I guess, right before 4:30-ish or 4 o'clock-ish today, that Dr. Ronnie Jackson said the president is in excellent health. However, like most Americans, he has high cholesterol. He needs to lose 10 to 15 pounds. And he's 3 pounds heavier than he was in September 2016. Why such fascination with presidential physicals, especially Donald Trump's?
Well, I think especially because Trump was the oldest president sworn in, and he is in good health, does not smoke, does not drink, but has said in the past he wanted to lose some weight, but he doesn't like exercises other than golf. So, but there's fascination, and I think it was extraordinary for the White House to actually have a briefing on this where reporters could ask the doctor questions. That hasn't happened in recent history. They do release the stats of, like, President Obama, but you couldn't ask questions about it. So I thought that was pretty transparent for this White House.
Although Dr. Jackson did say at the top, if anybody gets sick in this White House, just remember, I'm probably be the doctor attending to you, so be nice. I thought that was great. All right. Thank you so much, Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief of The Hill.
Thanks, Lauren.
Iraqis are burying their dead this week after 2 separate suicide bombing attacks in Baghdad. The country's military is bracing for more potential attacks by terrorists during elections in May. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsby reports from the Pentagon with the U.S. military's response. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. The military is calling the most recent bombing a cowardly act, a stark reminder the battle against the terrorist group isn't over. But the U.S.-led coalition says despite the challenges, there's still reason to feel hopeful about the future of Iraq. Security forces have a warning for Iraqi citizens. ISIS will still strike. That's despite success in uprooting the militants across the country.
Schools continue to open. People return to their homes.
But General James Glenn, who's with the U.S.-led coalition stationed in Baghdad, says Iraq is on the road to recovery. 3 years of war have devastated much of northern and western Iraq and forced hundreds of thousands to flee the country. Lauren Ashburn and our team got to see the devastation in Christian villages in the Nineveh Plain firsthand last April. Are there religious minorities who are returning to their homes? Is there more of a sense of normalcy there in that area?
it's an encouraging situation. Unique to the Nineveh Plains, you're exactly right. A very diverse and rich area, and an area where there is now a sense of opportunity to return and see what the future may hold. And some places are going to recover from ISIS's presence quicker than others.
Baghdad, the country's capital, remains a terrorist target. Iraqis are calling on the government to step up security. This woman says Iraqis were expecting the violence because of the upcoming elections in May. She says every 4 years they have to live through this suffering because of political differences and disagreements. This student says there is an invisible war going on. Sleeper cells still active.
Despite all of the danger, many of the religious minorities who live in Iraq are now returning to their towns and villages. The Knights of Columbus today applauded the Trump administration, especially Vice President Mike Pence, for working to get tens of millions of aid dollars to Christians and other communities in Iraq targeted for genocide, which they say is now being put to use. Lauren?
The Knights of Columbus also support this program. Wyatt, the U.S.-led coalition and the Iraqi military have claimed a lot of victories in the past several months. Do they know how many ISIS fighters still remain in Iraq? How long is it going to take to root them out?
Well, General Glenn was pressed on this question, Lauren, today, but they say they don't know the exact number of ISIS fighters left in Iraq specifically. But he says the numbers are really not their focus at this point. From a military viewpoint, they're really trying to figure out where the militants are, and that could be even coming from across the border in Syria, and where exactly they're going. They say if they can track their movements, they'll have a much better idea of about how to stop them. Lauren?
Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the Pentagon. Thank you, Wyatt. The murder of a leading Serbian politician in northern Kosovo is being called an act of terrorism. 64-year-old Oliver Ivanovic was shot and killed this morning. The murder raises tensions in the region, and it halts EU-mediated talks between Kosovo and Serbia on the day they were set to resume. Police are still searching for the killers. President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela calls for an investigation into Catholic priests over alleged hate speech. El Nacional newspaper reports the reason stemmed from two bishops who recently were critical of the socialist government. One prayed for the liberation of the corrupt plague that sees citizens eating from garbage, and the other asked the country to be saved from corruption. Maduro says the church officials may have committed a crime. Turkey President Tayyip Erdogan will meet Pope Francis at the Vatican next month. The talks are expected to focus on the status of Jerusalem. Both world leaders are against the U.S. decision to recognize the Holy City as Israel's capital. Coming up, a preview of the 45th March for Life and open door policy. A bishop in England has a request for Catholic churches in his country. Earlier this week, 33 bishops from Europe visited a Catholic school in Gaza. The theme of their 6-day trip to the Holy Land is education. The group also visited Jewish grade schools and a Jewish university. A crowd of 6,000 braved below freezing weather to participate in Chicago's March for Life on Sunday. Keynote speaker Ramona Trevino, a former Planned Parenthood director turned pro-life activist, told the crowd the deadliest thing in the world is indifference. Cardinal Blaise Cupich, the city's archbishop and co-owner of the Chicago Bears football team, were among the participants. And in just a few days, more than 100,000 people are expected to rally right here in Washington, D.C. for the 45th annual March for Life. Joining me now, we are honored to welcome Jeannie Mancini, president of the March for Life. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Lauren.
So happy to have you. You must be tired already.
There's a lot of work preparing for the march, but as we were talking about a little bit beforehand, it's all worth it when you get up there and you see the young people and their enthusiasm. You know, I think it was St. John Paul II that said young people are the best ambassadors for life, and it's contagious the day of the March for Life.
Oh, I know they come here in droves.
They sure
and
do.
Paul Ryan is going to be addressing the crowd this year. He's won who hadn't addressed it last year. It was Vice President Mike Pence last year. Any word if the president will come?
Well, we've extended invitations to the White House and nothing's yet confirmed, but stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Okay, all right. We have seen major strides in the pro-life movement since this presidency began. And many really credit President Trump and Vice President Mike Pence for supporting and promoting the pro-life agenda. Has the president, do you think, been a tipping point in the movement?
Well, when we're looking just at public policy, it's been amazing to see what's been accomplished this past year. And I know the enthusiasm of marchers is at an all-time high, I think, because of that. So beginning, first of all, with personnel as policy and putting some of the highest people in the highest levels of government in wonderful positions like the vice presidents, like some of the cabinets, UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. He's really surrounded himself with incredibly pro-life staff. But maybe the most important thing that he's done this year with regard to life is the nomination and confirmation of Supreme Justice Gorsuch, Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch. And then he's made a ton of other judicial nominations as well. I think only 18 have been confirmed, but things like that have a huge impact on building a culture of life.
In the Senate, they're set to take up the 20-week abortion bill, and we're not sure whether or not that's going to be brought to a vote or not, but it calls for up to 5 years in prison for medical providers who perform those abortions. It's clear, really, I think, if you look at the tea leaves, that the bill would never pass, would not have enough votes to pass. But why are pro-lifers pushing for a vote? Does it have anything to do with midterms?
Well, sure. I mean, that always sort of plays into things. But this bill is a no-brainer. 8 out of 10 Americans for something like the last 10 years have agreed that we should be limiting abortion more than it is now. A Marist poll just came out this week, and literally 8 out of 10 Americans would limit abortion at most the first 3 months of pregnancy, the first trimester. And that's what this bill does. And so it's unfortunate to me that it's being seen in this, really partisan way when it should be a no-brainer.
One thing you said that I love is that you hope that there isn't a march in 5 years.
We need to work ourselves out of a job. I mean, it's not like, okay, let's build the March for Life more and more and more. It's like the end game is to end abortion, to change hearts and minds, to create a culture where abortion is unthinkable. And we've got our work cut out for us, but we're moving in the right direction.
Do you think?
I do.
Okay,
we're moving in the direction of life. Let's have another interview on that, because there are so many things we could talk about.
All right. I know, Jeannie. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
And I hope Saturday morning brings you pajamas and coffee.
Me too.
Okay. All right. Take care. Jeannie Mancini, President, March for Life. And stay with EWTN for comprehensive coverage of the March for Life. We will be on the air from 9 in the morning Eastern until 5:30 Eastern this Friday, bringing you all of the excitement from Washington. Up next, stay open. We'll tell you an English bishop's demand to be more like the Anglican Church. The Catholic Church honors Saint Berard and his companions on their feast day. Berard was a Franciscan friar born in Italy. He and 4 others were killed together because of their faith. The martyrs were canonized in the 15th century. Bishop Michael Young Ming Chung of Hong Kong worries about strained relations between his country and China. In an interview with our partners at the National Catholic Register, Bishop Young says he hopes to be a bridge, quote, regarding the church and the Chinese government. Many topics are discussed. If something is against our principles, I don't think there is any reason to sacrifice our principles. Once you sacrifice, there is nothing left. For more on that interview with the bishop, go to National Catholic Register at ncregister.com. At the Pope's audience last week, Cardinal Zen, the former Bishop of Hong Kong, met with Pope Francis. The 86-year-old cardinal has been a strong proponent of democracy and religious freedom. A Catholic bishop in England spends a few days out of town and makes a startling discovery. Bishop Philip Egan of Portsmouth, England, says, in part on Twitter, "Every Catholic church I tried to visit was locked. One even had the utter hypocrisy to display a poster from maintenance to mission. Why this? Is this when every Anglican church is welcomely open?" Anglican churches in the UK keep their doors open even outside service times. And finally tonight, a teacher at a Catholic school in Bolton, England, hasn't been able to say her name for 20 years due to a stammer. But now Shelley Turner is reading in front of her 4th grade class at St. Bernadette's Catholic School. The Bolton News reports that her secret was breathing techniques and hours in front of a mirror. Shelley encourages people, quote, to not be afraid of who they are. What a great message, especially for our youth. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, thank you for watching. I'm Lauren Ashburn. We'll be back tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night, and God bless you.